Welcome to Anchors Away, a podcast for boaters. As a marina owner and Freedom Boat Club franchise owner on Lake George, I get to see every day the joy that boating brings to people's lives. There's nothing like seeing the smiling faces headed out for a fun day on the water and the experiences we help provide and memories we help make as people disconnect from their busy lives and reconnect with family and friends. Our podcast features conversations with boating experts and industry leaders where we discuss things like how to get into boating, industry trends, boating destinations, tips, tricks, products, and more. From beginners to experienced boaters, we hope these conversations will inspire you to get on the water, spend more time on the water, and introduce others to the boating lifestyle. I recently had the chance to catch up with Skip Sorenson. Skip started his career as a fourth-generation shipbuilder and since has achieved proven value creation results for both public and private equity companies. He's been involved in multiple restructuring and process improvement initiatives as both a CEO and CFO. Skip has been involved in many M&A transactions during his career, selling and purchasing both private and public companies. He was awarded the CFO of the Year by the DCEO Magazine in 2011. Skip launched Anchors Away Capital in 2013. Anchors Away Capital, great name, is a boutique investment banking firm formed to pursue the buying and selling of maritime-related businesses, including shipping, tankers, and ship and boat building companies, as well as industrial, alternative energy, and technology companies. Since the founding of the firm, AAC has investigated and facilitated multiple boat and shipbuilding transactions, including the facilitation and the acquisition of Intrepid Powerboats, a major center console boat brand. The firm has recently been hard at work acquiring notable boating companies, including Century Boats and Vanquish Boats. Skip is also hard at work building membership in the club yacht charter business, making luxury yacht charters more accessible through fractional charters. Skip and I discussed growing up in a boat building family, the recent M&A push in the boating industry, how the pandemic has affected boaters and boat companies, the impact technology is having on boating, and more. Enjoy! Skip, thanks for joining me today. It's definitely been an interesting time in the boating industry and a very interesting spring and summer. Coming off a summer where we saw a really huge surge in demand for boating, many new people trying out boating for the first time or getting back into it. So I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on everything we have going on and what's going on at your companies. And as I just mentioned, I thought I was going to catch you driving an RV, but it sounds like you're off the road and back in the office now. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that RV trip before we dive in.
Sure, Matt. Nice to meet you and glad to have a discussion here today. The RV trip was up to a new dealer that we have in Annapolis, and we had a very successful trip. We did a photo shoot with a couple of boats, and the RV that I have is a very large RV, and it's wrapped in the Century logo. So it's a great conversation piece wherever I pull up. I have lots of people coming up to me and saying that they had owned a Century or they own a Century now and that they really like the brand. And so it's really neat to get to meet people across the country who are Century fans.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I understand from your bio, you're a fourth generation shipbuilder. And so I'd like to start off learning a little bit about your background in boating and how you got onto the water. And for some people, that's being introduced later in life. It sounds like you might have been born with boating in your blood. So give me a little background on your life in boating.
Yeah, I think that's a true statement. I have boating in my blood. So I grew up with a grandfather who lived at a marina and had a boat there. And so we used to go fishing with him all the time in Yorktown, Virginia. And he worked at Newport News Shipbuilding, where his father worked, and my father ended up working. So I'm a fourth generation shipbuilder, and I basically swore up and down I would not go into the family business. I was not headed into shipbuilding. I was going to do investment banking or a pro golf career. And the summer before I finished college, I figured out pro golf wasn't going to end up happening. So I went and did a summer job at the shipyard where I was a mechanic on 3 different submarines, installing foundations, putting equipment on foundations, and then testing the equipment. And that was a fantastic experience. I really enjoyed it. And even though I finished with a finance degree, I ended up going to the shipyard and working there for 7 years and became a construction supervisor. My father always suggested that if I did go into the corporate world, that I try to start off on the manufacturing floor. So that's what I did. I spent 3 years building the USS Oklahoma City, I had responsibility for the torpedo room, the auxiliary machine room, the ballast tanks, and the first construction and testing of a vertical launch cruise missile system, which, by the way, ended up firing some of the first shots of the first Persian Gulf War. So it was really very fulfilling to hear from the captain that the system had worked appropriately and was part of how we defended the country.
So how did that translate to the pleasure boating side? And did you grow up, aside from fishing, having a real love of being out on the water versus just working on boats?
I did. I always enjoyed going out on boats. I won't say that it was quite as strong as it is today. I want to say it was probably 15 or 20 years ago that I somehow ventured into the yacht side of the equation and started reading all the magazines and going to boat shows, and generally enjoyed the larger boats and yachts. And so I became familiar with all the different brands. I met a lot of people at those shows. I guess I was working on my 10,000 hours to get to greatness and didn't realize it. But my day job at that point in time was private equity. I was doing a lot of turnarounds and restructurings, and I did 4 PE portfolio company liquidity events over an 8-year period, and it was a very intense time frame. And when I finished with that, I ended up opening a investment banking firm, a very small boutique firm that focused exclusively on the maritime industry. And the vast majority of my clients, 90% of them, are boat manufacturers who are founder owners of their business and are looking for some type of retirement plan, estate planning, or liquidity event. So I ended up helping to buy and sell different boat businesses and amassed a lot more of a network and more of an understanding of what it takes to be successful in those areas.
So you transitioned out of the marine industry and then back into it. Was there necessarily a calling back into the boating world after your finance career and starting this, or did it just kind of seem to make sense from a business perspective?
No, there was definitely a calling. As I mentioned, I started off thinking I was going into investment banking or a golf career. So when I went through aerospace and defense and a number of IT computer companies and ultimately into private equity, when I decided to leave the private equity world, I ended up in investment banking. So that was a calling back to what I had originally envisioned for my career, number one. And number two, I felt like the area that I really wanted to focus on was my second love, which was boating and the maritime industry. So it was a calling back to two of the original areas of responsibility that I had early in my career.
Your firm Anchors Away has been doing some big time acquisitions, companies like Century and Vanquish, and it seems to be part of a larger M&A trend in the marine industry right now. Over the last few years, we've seen some major acquisitions all around the industry. What do you think is driving on a macro level and boating all of this M&A activity, and what makes boat companies so attractive right now?
Right now, I think the majority of M&A that's occurring within the industry is strategic M&A. So there are, I just off the top of my head would say 20% of the M&A activity is a private equity firm coming in and seeing an opportunity in maritime and going out and finding assets. The other 80% is strategic in nature. It's someone who's already in the industry who sees the opportunity to acquire a brand that they think highly of, or to find manufacturing or product development capabilities that they don't currently have. And that causes different companies within the industry to go pursue others to bolt on or add on to their existing business. So most of what we've done has all been strategic related. We do go out to the marketplace and touch base with high net worth family offices as well as private equity. But for the most part, the buyers of the businesses that we represent are already within the industry.
And can you tell me a little bit about what you've done with Century and with Vanquish since you've been involved?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. The Century business I came upon at a boat show where I met the Lucius family, who were the owners of the business. And we got to talking about their business. They were looking for capital to help them grow. And so I came on board about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, to help them from a consulting and capital raising basis. And I got to know them well, and I got to know the business very well, and felt like the brand had been underserved and undercapitalized, and with the right type of leadership and capital behind it, could be very successful. So I ended up going out and raising a fund through some business associates of mine, friends and family, and we ended up purchasing a controlling interest in Century in the middle of March. And I came on board as the CEO for the business in February, and then we completed the transaction. And then 3 weeks after that, I had another client who I've been working with for a year, Vanquish Boats, who I helped on a trademark dispute in Europe. Ended up combining them with Century. It looked like a great product line addition for us. Century's primarily known as an offshore fishing boat that is family friendly when needed, and the Vanquish line, which we now refer to as Coronado, is a family friendly boat that you can fish off of. That's mostly inshore, lake, those types of boating activities versus offshore. The boat can go offshore, but they were very complementary product lines, and we felt they'd be a good addition. So we have moved the manufacturing of the new Coronado product line to our factory in Zephyr Hills, Tampa, and we are busily building those boats along with Century boats because, as you know, and referenced at the beginning of our discussion, the boat business has been booming lately.
Yeah, what a time to step into CEO. Now, I'm guessing, did you have to shut down the lines at all, and did that cause any kind of backlog in inventory and production?
We did. We shortly after we bought the business, we had to furlough the business for 5 weeks, furlough all the employees. So yes, we did shut down, but it's been, our first and foremost concern was on the safety and health of our employees, and so we instituted quite a few safety measures when they returned with the mask and hand washing stations and temperature checks and a lot of education for our employee base. And then since then, we've been really hammering it on the sales side, have lots of orders and backlog. And so we've been ramping up production to get back into form. We are finding some issues with the supply network and the supply chain. So we have parts here and there that are late to our manufacturing floor because our suppliers had to shut down for a period of time. And so the whole industry was impacted in what I'll call March and April timeframe, and is slowly getting back up to speed.
Are there any industry-wide trends that are informing design decisions or production decisions in the line since you've been over that you guys are looking to capitalize on?
Well, I'll say there's two initiatives, one of which maybe is not influencing our product development as much as the other. But the first one that I like, I think it's very healthy for the industry, is a growth in boat rentals and boat clubs. I'm dealing with a few marinas who have an interest in our lines for their boat clubs, and we're having general discussions about how to manage those assets, how to procure them, how to service them, how to manage them through their life cycle, and ultimately dispose of them. So those are really interesting discussions, and I think that initiative is fantastic for the industry because it gets people back into boating without having the intimidation and the expense of owning a major asset. Sometimes families will buy a boat that's more expensive than their house, and there's a lot of upkeep with that. So if they can get into a boat rental for a day, or if they can get into a club and have access to a boat, we think that's a great way to get new boaters back in the industry, and we have products that are supported for that. Our products are super high quality, they're long lasting, they're safe, they're very wide, beamy boats, so that they're a good selection for a boat rental or a boat club. The second item that I would mention that is influencing our product design is engine propulsion technology. So there is a push both into and movement away from outboards into stern drives for center consoles. I just recently had a discussion with a major engine supplier last week on my RV trip, and we're looking to form a strategic relationship to help with that transition. And stern drives are very economical from a fuel consumption standpoint. They're very quiet. They are fishable. They're much easier to fish over than an outboard would be. And they provide easy access to the stern of the boat through a transom door and swim platform, much more so than an outboard would, and gives families flexibility on how they are entering the water. So we'll see if that trend really picks up momentum, but we're going to investigate it with this strategic partnership. Then there's also a push towards more environmentally friendly propulsion, a la electric propulsion, and trying to do diesel electric generators along with battery banks, and giving a hybrid capability to allow some diesel propulsion in addition to battery propulsion. So we're investigating all of those different approaches for our boats. We're also in the midst of bringing on board a manufacturer's rep in Europe. Europeans are much more interested in inboard stern drives and IPS. They're very style conscious and don't like the idea of having outboards hanging off the rear of the boat. So we are going to be implementing some changes primarily to our Coronado line that will meet the needs of our European customers as well.
Do you see a big merger of technology and boating? And every boat that we see, every model year that comes out, there's more and more techie gadgets and integrated systems. Where do you see technology and boating merging right now?
Today, the primary area I see it is on the software side. So there are a lot of new software programs that are coming out that effectively, in a nutshell, help provide a better customer experience to boaters. And that is through having a means to have the systems on the boat monitored on a real-time basis and service techs dispatched to the boat proactively due to diagnostics that are run, and to have something fixed before you even know that it's broken. So those different types of applications that have been developed over the last few years are going to make the user experience much better, which if I had to select one major initiative that the industry needed to tackle, it would be just that, improving the customer experience for boaters. I think that's why we've seen a bit of a decline in boating over the last 10, 15 years. It's very complicated, it's very expensive, and there's no way to just basically hop in the boat like you would a car and go out and have fun on the water. There's a lot of prep time, there's cleanup afterwards, there's maintenance. So everything that we can do to create processes and systems that help the boater enjoy the boat more and take care of the boat less, I think is going to be really positive for the industry.
Yeah, you read my mind on what my next follow-up question was going to be, and that is, with this huge surge of interest in new boaters and returning boaters this summer, how do we make sure that they're all still boaters next summer and that the experience is something that they enjoyed and want to keep coming back to? And I think, everything we can do to make it easier really, really touches on that. But is there anything else that you think industry-wide needs to be addressed to make sure that we've captured boaters for life versus for one pandemic-filled summer?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, obviously safety is always very important, and ease of operation is extremely important. So the joystick approach to boating has been out for 10 or 15 years now, but it's not as prevalent as it could be or should be. And that takes a lot of the intimidation out of boating. If you can teach someone how to operate a boat safely with that type of mechanism, I think it's less intimidating than having twin screws and using the throttle and steering. And so I think that's a big initiative that should be underway. I think getting more kids into boating, I like to say that if you boat as a kid, you're a boater for life. And that certainly is what happened with me. And so I'd love to see more programs where we can take children from any and all areas, whether they have lakes nearby or they're near a coast, but all kids from all walks of life to be on a boat and to see the enjoyment of that. It makes it much more likely that they'll enter boating later in life and have positive experiences. Additionally, we need to get the cost of boating down. So boats have become very expensive. It's hard to find a small boat that's a lot of fun. We're in the midst of acquiring a product line that'll be 12, 14, and 16-foot boats. And they're seat 2 to 4 people, and they're just something small to get out on the water on, much like a wave runner would be, and to have an enjoyable experience putt-putting around or going at a decent clip. That's I think what we need to have more of is easy access into boating at an inexpensive price point.
Do you have, looking back at boating as a kid and being a boater for life, do you have any favorite boating memories that you can specifically recall from your childhood out on the water?
Well, I remember my first quote unquote big fish that I caught was a 2.5 pound flounder. And I remember that on the same trip, I ended up catching a dogfish shark. So that was drilled into my memory. I remember going with my uncle who owned the marina that my grandfather lived on. He would take his little support boat out of Yorktown and would take it out to the big tanker boats that were moored outside of the marina near the Virginia Electric and Power Company, I guess bringing coal to the power company. And I remember those rides very fondly. Nothing exactly special occurring on those boat rides, just being out there on the water and watching my uncle do his work was fascinating. And then I guess the last memory that I would have would maybe not be the best memory, but it is a significant one. One of my first boats that I ever bought when I was out of college was a small 14-foot Larson, and I had it tied up at a dock at the condominium area that we lived in. And I went out there one day and it was gone. And so I lived on the Elizabeth River, and there were a lot of tugs that would go back and forth through the river, and they created a super deep wake. Well, when I tied up the boat, I only had 2 lines, and so for some reason I tied opposite ends of the boat up, and the boat flipped, got water in it, got heavy, broke the lines, and sank to the bottom of the slip. And so I had to get my wife's uncle, who was a Navy diver at some point in his life, to come over and help us to resurrect the boat. And I want to say it was towed out to the middle of the Elizabeth River and sunk. I didn't have any money in that boat. It was something, super old and used, and I hadn't invested anything into it, but it was a lesson to be learned about the safety of tying boats up and making sure they're secure and anticipating all, sorts of bad weather and things that can happen to a boat. And so it was a very valuable lesson for me without a whole lot of expense. So that is another memory that I have.
Yeah, that was the right boat for that to happen to. What are you boating on now, and do you have a dream boat that you envision in your future?
I have another sister company called Club Yacht Charter that is a charter club with 1,200 members. And those members are all interested in chartering yachts. And so we have one company-owned yacht. It's a 100-foot Broward that's been in refit, being renovated for the last 2 years, and should be ready in about 45 days. And that boat will be able to be chartered by any of our members. And they will also, the way the business model was set up, we anticipated being able to charter by cabin. So we would have an actual reservation system where you could go on board when the boat was on its little destination to the different ports. You'd be able to sign in for a 2-night stay in a cabin and be the 1/5 of the cost of a normal charter. With the COVID outbreak, until there's a virus, we're likely not going to open up that aspect of our business plan and stick to full boat charters. But that's been an amazing activity. It's taken twice as long and cost 4 times as much as we anticipated, but it's going to be a beautiful boat when it's finished. It'll be very capable and functional. We set up a whole lot of different private areas. If someone wanted to come on the boat and charter a cabin and didn't want to really be around other people, we have lots of dining options. We actually have an app where you can reserve different spots on the boat, so lots of sunning options. And that boat also has 2 tenders associated with it. So we have a 31-foot Novarania, which is towed behind that boat when it's on its charter excursions, and then a 15-foot Czar Fermenti inflatable tender that sits on the aft swim platform. So those are the boats that we have today, and I look forward to putting into the business and using ourselves once the boat is finished. We're supposed to have a christening party at RMK Merrill Stevens Shipyard, where it's being refit on October 8th at 3 o'clock. That's the date I've set for the yard. The boat's going to be there. It's going to be finished. All the employees are going to be there. And we're going to have a party. And so get your butts in gear and get the boat finished.
Last question, just because it sounds like you've traveled the world and boated the world, and I love hearing about different boating destinations. Is there a boating destination that you've been to that stands out among the rest?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. Probably I would point to two. Capri, Italy, was an amazing charter trip that we had. And that was in the middle of a long trip that we took to Florence and Rome and Napoli, and then on the boat at Capri, and then we flew to Saint-Tropez and just had an amazing 10-day, I think it was a graduation trip, vacation for one of my sons. And then the other one would be the Balearics. We went to Ibiza and Mallorca and had a charter trip there. The Ibiza activity was our sons. I have two sons who are older now, but that was one of their favorite trips ever because it's a big party town in the middle of the summer. And then on Mallorca, we were able to take a trip up the west coast of Mallorca, heading north and passing by all the cliffs. And it was just a gorgeous day and, a very fond memory. It was an anniversary trip for my wife and I that we had the kids along for the first 3 days, and then we had the rest of the time to ourselves, and it was an amazing experience. So any time on a boat with the family is fantastic. It's some of the best vacations we've ever had because it's downtime, it's alone time, it's cell phone downtime, and we really like it. And that was really the reason why we started Club Yacht Charter. We were on the back of our boat. It was an 80-foot yacht, and we were docked next to a 225-foot yacht. And I wondered, wow, even if I could afford that charter for a week, close to $600,000 or $700,000, I'm not sure that I would do it, but I would love to have the experience of being on that boat for a while. So if I could only stow away, or if I could figure out how to charter a cabin on the boat, then that would be a fantastic experience. So that's where the genesis of the Club Yacht Charter came from. We want to bring boating specifically yacht chartering to the masses. So if you think of the yacht charter experience as being a pyramid, with the top of the pyramid being $1 million a week charter, and the bottom being let's call it $25,000 a week charter, then if you have a boat that can split that into 5 different cabins, then you can effectively have somebody on a boat for less than $1,000 a night. So we want to have more boats in that program. We want to be able to extend our reach to other geographies, and so we'll bring in private boats, and we'll make those available to all of our 1,200 club members.
Very cool. Well, thank you for the time. I know we're kind of coming up on a half hour and don't want to keep it too much longer, but I really appreciate your time, and it sounds like you've got a lot of really interesting things going on with your different companies in the business. Is there any company that you're involved with that we didn't get to that you want to mention before we end it here?
Well, there is one other. I have a firm called United Executive Agency that stemmed from my love and fulfillment in my career of helping others with their careers. So if you think of sports stars having agents or movie stars having agents, we are attempting to do the same thing for business executives. And that business will be launched sometime probably early next year. We've been doing pilots. We probably had 7 different executives come through at this point. And I provide career advice, training, executive coaching. We do endorsements for them. We help them with publicity and social media. And then we'll help them with career placement as well, job placement. If they aren't in a particular career or opportunity right now, we'll help them find a new one, or we will help them in their existing career and be able to take on other opportunities as they arise.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. Well, thank you for sharing all that. And again, thank you for the time.
Yeah, you're welcome, Matt.
And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, great to talk to you, Matt, anytime.
I had a great time learning from Skip and can't wait to see what's in store for the brands that he's working with and his club yacht charter business. And in dreaming of the day that I can book a cabin on one of those boats. Until next time, happy boating.